You guys dragged Main Street?
I got in really big trouble too for leaving that party.
People were giving me a hard time. Like, all the girls are like, why didn't you kiss her?
Johnny's a pretty cute kid. I would not mind dating him.
Wow, I really do like her. Like, I do.
It's a Yawi family! Yawi!
You asked for it and you're going to now get it. And that is how Sarah and I met over 20 years ago, probably 21 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? How we met and how we fell in love. Did we fall in love at that time? Started
Slowly,
to.
yeah.
So we thought it'd be really, really cool, since we are in Stockholm, Sweden, to tell the story in a little bit different style. And so through this whole entire story, you're gonna be seeing different parts of Stockholm, which is kind of fun. So the story starts out as us getting an education. So we started off, I lived in a small town and Sarah lived in a small town over here. And in the middle was a high school. Actually, it was a junior high. We actually knew each other and started off, not really a relationship, but knowing each other in junior high school. And the thing that I remember most about her, and she doesn't like this, is I called her the little house on the prairie girl. The reason I called her the little house on the prairie girl is that she wore little house on the prairie dresses, which are these long flowing dresses. They're not typically what people wear in junior high school. That's just what I remember. Like, again, this is way back in junior high school. This was in 9th grade.
Yeah, in my
8th and 9th grade.
the style that was coming in was girls wore dresses, more shorter, tighter dresses, but my mom loved to sew and she liked to make dresses for us. So on picture days, people would dress up a lot more than they do now. And so I would wear a dress that my mom had made for me for picture day. And I think that's what Johnny remembers.
Dress is what it was.
To be completely honest, I don't remember you in junior high. I remember your friends, but I don't remember you.
What's up with that? So as you guys seen our video just the other day about the whole wedding, divorce, whatever way you want to call it, this thing that we're going through in our life right now, where we're trying to make sure that we're staying connected. I think it's a good thing to reflect on where you came from, and that's pretty much what we're doing here, is reflecting on where we came from. And when you start doing that, you start finding out the why. Why is it and how is it that Sarah and I ended up together through, number one, a little house on the prairie dress, and her not even knowing who I was in junior high school. What a loser. See? Doesn't matter.
Me knowing Johnny's friends, I should have run into him. I probably did, I just didn't realize who he was. We would follow the skater boys around. I went to liking crazy hard rock music, to being a vegetarian, to just kind of, I had a best friend and I just kind of did whatever she did. I didn't know at all who I was, so I definitely couldn't have known who he was.
And the crowd that I hung out with was a very actually small crowd. And what we like to do is we like to hike, we like to be in the outdoors, we like to do different things like that. And so, and the friends that I hung out with were also very into their grades. They were into what their future was going to be. I wasn't so much. And so I was more just kind of bouncing off the walls like Sarah, trying to figure out who I was. And just kind of trying to exist at that time, because I was very shy. And I really, really, really liked girls, but I didn't know how to even look at them. So even if I thought Sarah was cute or if I liked her, I would have never talked to her, especially if she was wearing her little house on the prairie dress.
It wasn't that bad.
Fast forward to our sophomore year in high school, which was the next year. The first half of the year, we didn't have any classes together, and I don't remember even seeing you. But the second part of the year, we had a mutual class. We had a class that we were in together, and it was called jewelry class, where we made different kinds of jewelry. Bracelets, rings, different kinds of jewelry.
I wasn't very good at making jewelry, and I noticed pretty quickly that Johnny was very good at making jewelry, so I tried to turn on the charm and ask if he would make my jewelry for me.
And so I did. I made a cabochon ring. I think we still have that ring somewhere, don't we? Maybe. So I made her jewelry for her, and thus I helped her get a good grade. And that was also a time where, remember, I was not so focused on grades, but I was hanging out with people that were focused on good grades. And so my sophomore year, I was kind of hanging out with the same people, kind of the same crowd. This was also the time where we were getting to the point where we were turning 16 at the end of the year, and it was time to get a license. This was something that I was so excited about, and it changed me forever. Getting a license changed everything. But before that point, it was, I remember the last week of school, we were in the back of the room after everything was done, after I did all of Sarah's assignments for her. We really still didn't even know each other at that point. She was just more of taking advantage of the fact that I knew what I was doing. Neither one of us really liked each other. My sister and her future husband were actually in that class as well, and my sister, I remember saying to me, "Hey, that Sarah girl's kind of cute." And I'm like, "Who?" And she's like, "The one that you keep doing all of her work for." And I'm like, no, I would never, ever, ever, ever want anything to do with her. Do you remember the last day? Up to the last day, she was throwing a party.
I was having a birthday party, and we were talking to a mutual friend, and I invited him to my birthday party, and then I said, "Oh, yeah, you can come too if you want."
Oh yeah, by the way, Johnny, you can come too. Now, you know what that means. That's code word for you're really not invited.
That wasn't true.
It's just how it felt. It felt like, oh, by the way, you can come too because you're standing here.
This was my 16th birthday party. 16 is such a big year when you're in high school. You're driving in our religion, we're dating. I was trying to figure out who I was and who I wanted to be, what friends I wanted to hang out with. I invited a whole bunch of different people so I could decide who I would be wanting to hang out with, where I was going from here.
So the part of the story where I come into play, that mutual friend of ours that she invited to the party, and oh, by the way, invited me. So I had never really got his number until that night. And so because the biggest reason is I wanted to go to this party. It was my first real big party that I had been invited to, personally invited to, right? And so that was also a time where I'd really gotten interested in like BMX, Haro, freestyle biking. And so I started meshing with another group that liked doing that. And so this group was over here, and I was leaving my group of friends, not really intentionally, but it was happening. There was more interest over here with the biking group. And by the way, kind of a troublemaking group as well, just more fun and more exciting. And so this guy, not necessarily in that group, but kind of a little bit, I got his number. And back then there were no cell phones, there were pagers, but I didn't have a pager. And it was just a phone on the wall. And so I got his house phone number, and I took it home with the intent completely, from this time I got home from school and got through work, just planning on going to that party that night.
Well, the party kind of ended up being a flop anyways. With the new friend group, we left, went to Main Street. We had this thing where you would drag up and down Main Street, drive up and down, meet people, talk to people. It was kind of dumb, but that's what we thought was cool.
So here I am, really excited about going to this party. And so once I got off work, I called my buddy, and I called my buddy, and I called my buddy, and no answer. So I actually did not get to go to this party. So it's a good thing that she actually did not stick around to the party. She went dragging Main Street. You guys drag Main Street?
I got in really big trouble too for leaving that party.
So here's the thing though that happened. At that point, we both turned 16 and everything started changing. The next 3 months was summer, and we both got our licenses, we both got cars, but we still did not get to know each other yet. Until school started again in September, and we had like a town celebration where the carnival comes in. And we drove in, I remember, because I got a ticket. I got a ticket for not stopping at a stop sign. That was my first ever ticket. And Sarah was at this carnival, and I remember talking to her, and I remember thinking,
I remember being at the carnival, and I remember talking to a lot of people at the carnival, but I don't necessarily remember talking to Johnny at the carnival that night.
So this is the part where I say, there was already a part of me that was starting to like her. I remember going home that night and going, she's kind of a cute girl, and she wasn't wearing a Little House on the Prairie dress that day. She was wearing, I remember what she was wearing. She was wearing my favorite outfit of all time, which is She had her corduroy overalls on and a white shirt underneath. I remember what she was wearing. Do you remember you were wearing that?
I did not remember that I was wearing that.
So I had a 1964 and a half orange, bright orange Mustang. And remember how I said that changed my life forever? I kind of was getting rebellious. In fact, I was getting very rebellious. That was the transition to friends. And so I really transitioned over to this crowd that was hanging out with the cute girls, right? And that's really what I really started getting interest in girls and getting a little bit more eager and willing to put myself out there and not be as shy. And so my way of doing that is, hey, you hang out with the crowd that's hanging out with the cute girls. So I did.
And I started hanging out with new girlfriends that were hanging out with the cute boys. These boys were the same boys
that I started hanging out with, and these girls that she started hanging out with were the ones that I wanted to get closer to. And so all of a sudden we found ourselves at the beginning of our junior year, we started hanging out together. It was distant, like we were just kind of there, we just kind of existed.
I remember one night we were hanging out at a restaurant and just goofing off, or Taco Time.
Or Wendy's.
Not Wendy's, there wasn't.
Fast food restaurant.
Fast food. Just hanging out, having fun, being silly. The boys were doing silly things.
We were showing off like boys do at that age, guys, whatever, right? We were showing off. And the girls were over in the corner giggling.
And driving home that night, my stepsister and I distinctly remember telling her that Johnny's a pretty cute kid. I would not mind dating him.
But it still wasn't time yet. It still apparently wasn't time for us to really start telling each other we liked each other. She caught my attention. I caught her attention apparently, but we still weren't really saying anything, and we were pretty much denying at that point. Business as usual, going to school, doing our thing, hanging out with this new crowd, getting to know who we were. Things continued to change quite a bit for me personally as my grades went down and my social interaction went up. I started sloughing school quite a bit. And the old crowd that I hung out with didn't necessarily like me anymore because I changed my clothing, I changed the way that I was doing things, I changed my attitude, I changed a lot of different things, and I started growing my hair out. Lots of stuff changed for me.
One bad thing about hanging out with the new friends, I wanted to hang out with them more than go to school. So we started sloughing more, we started spending more time just away from school in general, not getting good grades, not finishing classes.
And so Sarah had a Dodge Stratus, 1996 Dodge Stratus that she had, and I had the 1964 and a half Mustang. And so when we would all go together as friends, we would go and, yeah, we're not proud of it, but we would slough a few classes, right? And so we would jump into Sarah's car. She didn't like driving, and so she had someone else drive, and me and some of my buddies would take turns driving. So this went on about 2 months into school, where we were just kind of hanging out, coexisting kind of in the same space. She really wasn't dating anyone in the group in terms of the boys, and I really wasn't really dating any of the girls, but we were just kind of, as the other ones were kind of dating, is that right? Mm-hmm. As the other ones were kind of dating together and doing their thing, we would hang out with them. And we were kind of the third wheel in a lot of areas. I totally thought Sarah was totally cute. I totally thought that she was awesome, but I still didn't see her as dateable. It wasn't something that really crossed my mind. It was totally just like, I liked her, and I liked her a lot, but it wasn't to the point where I was confident enough to feel like I could even date her.
I felt the same way. I loved hanging out with Johnny. He was a cool kid. We had fun together, but it wasn't like, other than that time in the car, I'd never been like, yeah, we should date.
And now to the fun stuff. This is finally when we actually decided that things were going to get good. By the way, this is the King's Palace.
The King's Palace right here.
This is the King's Palace right here behind us. Isn't that incredible? In Sweden, Stockholm. Okay, so there was a night that Sarah had a friend, and we had a kind of a mutual friend that had a birthday party, and she was invited with all the girls to have like a girls' birthday party, a 16th birthday party, right? So all the girls went. Well, us guys caught wind of the girls actually having this party, but guys being invited, because this girl had a brother that was older, 1 year older than us, and the girl was 1 year younger, and so it was kind of like, okay, this is weird. Us guys, we've got to do something. So my buddy, he bugged the room. So we put a bug in the center of the room so we could hear the conversations and hear what was going on. Sure enough, when we pulled in front, it was radio frequency. So we tuned the radio to hear the frequency of the radio station to tune into this transmitter that was transmitting the sound. We heard that there were men there. There were guys there. So the guy, her older brother had invited people. So there was a party with these girls. The reason why we were so concerned about it or whatever is the guys that, my buddies, they were dating these girls that were there. And so we're like, we can't have anything crazy happening. Just before that, we actually called the girls, and my buddy, Jimmy, who is no longer with us, he passed away a few years ago, he called one of our other mutual friends, and they were talking on the phone. So Sarah was in one room at this house, and I was in the other room at my buddy's house, and they were talking. And my buddy, Jimmy, said, hey, it's finally time to connect Sarah and Johnny up. We need to make this happen. We need to play matchmaker, we need to make this happen. And I was like, Jimmy, shut it. Like, I'm not interested, it's not gonna happen. And on the other end of the line was our friend, and what was going on there?
I don't really remember, other than she's like, hey, you guys should date. And it's like, yeah, okay, sure. And
so that's kind of how that went. And so the whole night after that happened, my buddies and her friends were all playing this whole matchmaker game for the rest of the night. So we ended up actually finally getting invited to this party. We went to the party and we hung out. And I remember Sarah and I sitting on this small couch upstairs. Do you remember? Mm-hmm. And she laid down on my lap and she started playing with my hat, which she stole that night. It was a Fender hat. It was my one and only and favorite hat. But right then I was like, wait a minute. I really like this girl. Like, Jimmy's right. Like, she is something else.
it was awkward just because I didn't really know how to have a boyfriend. It's like, I want a boyfriend, but I don't know how to act when I have a boyfriend. So I was awkward, but I was like, yeah, this guy's pretty cool. I think this could work out.
And so, I guess the big question is, what happened that night? I went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Do I kiss her? Do I kiss her? Do I kiss her? And the only answer I could come up with in my own brain was, you need to respect this girl. So going back just a little bit, our friends had set us up, right? And back in those days, it was called going out with. That meant you were going steady, not just on one date. And so at that point, were we going out? We really didn't even know. We were really just flirting with each other, and we really liked it. Like, I went home that night. I didn't give her a kiss. It was more like a hug goodbye, right? Mm-hmm. And we just went our separate ways. I went home and I was feeling like, wow, I really do like her. Like, I do. Like, Jimmy's right. I really do like her.
I was the same. I was just like, yeah, it's cool. This is awesome. I get to know him better. And I don't know if I don't remember if I was like head over heels.
One of us kind of was. Not really head over heels, but I was pretty excited about it. So a few days after, at school, all of a sudden the girls that she hung out with caught wind that I didn't give her a kiss, because that's what they talk about, right? That's what girls talk about. People were giving me a hard time. Like, all the girls were like, why didn't you kiss her? Thought you guys were a thing. Like, what's going on?
So after that, Johnny and I were a thing. We started talking on the phone, and then we decided we need to set up another time to hang out.
Even though we were seeing each other at school and all that, there was no real holding hands or anything like that really going on yet.
So one night my sister and I went over to Johnny's house. We met his family, which scared me to death, and just hung out. We just sat in his room and the three of us talked, and then it was like, okay, we gotta go. So we went out, he hugged me goodbye, we got in the car, and I still didn't get a kiss.
So I went to school the next morning and I got so much crap. So much crap from these girls. I immediately had, I think, her sister and a few of their friends come up to me and go, are you kidding me? What a loser, you didn't even kiss her. And in my mind, I'm thinking, you know what? I want to take this kind of slow. I don't want this to be one of those where it's like, hurry and kiss her and just, camera started falling over. I really didn't want this to be one of those where, like, hurry and just kiss her and use her for the kiss and then be out. I really wanted I wanted to get to know her. I may have taken it a little bit too far, but third date, right? Maybe it's time. So I got a lot of crap from her friends.
A few nights later, another friend of mine came with me. We called and we're like, hey, let's go hang out with Johnny, come with me. And so we went over, sat in his room again, talked, and then she's like, hey guys, we gotta go, but I'm gonna go get in the car
she
first.
Left the room.
And then I'll see you out in the car in just a minute. I'll see you out in the car in just a minute.
She did. She nudged me and I'm like, okay, finally, okay. So Sarah knows that I'm going to kiss her, right? Because all the talk and the whole entire school, it seemed like it needed to happen. And so I'm like, finally, okay, I'm gonna kiss her. And it wasn't just a kiss. I made up for the 2 times that I missed the opportunity. So
It was a good kiss.
That is the night that we finally became a real thing.
We're official now.
Thank you so much for watching the story of how we met.
We just met Isabella and
Nicholas, aren't they
Nicholas.
so cute?
They are here in Sweden and we're here in Sweden. We traveled here just to meet them, right?
Yeah.
Right? But like they said, thank you so much for listening and asking for it. We had a lot of requests for this story of how we met. We hope you liked it. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. And if you want to say hi to Nicholas or Isabella, put them in the comments below. We love you guys, and as always,
You are worth it. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. And I eating cookies. Goodbye.